I mean, Leonard Fournette he scored 183.4 fantasy points. And I think Lamar Jackson kind of cements himself kind of above and beyond, right? I think
With the Trader Joe's, we're going to be staying far away.
about someone like a Josh Allen or someone like a Daniel Jones. But I know before we go, I know Joe has some breaking news. And
Oh, yes, sir.
This is why I say Fournette is like eating glass.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first weekly waiver episode of the Indecision Cave. I'm here with my co-host, Joseph Hall, our Commissioner Ashton Jones, and like we always like to say, the leader in regular season victories, Justin Coleman. Although, Justin, it don't look too great in your week one results right now, man, right? Okay, we'll be quiet. We'll be quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, like we said, today we're going to focus on some waiver wire picks, people that you should be looking up, and maybe they're on rosters already, maybe not. Maybe we're giving you a little nugget or two, maybe we're not, but just trying to get you ready for your next week's matchup. So we're going to throw to Joe real quick. Joe, who are you looking at on a roster or not on a roster that maybe is available in most leagues that you'd like to see added to your squad if you had the chance?
So the guy who I'm going to speak about, I'm fortunate enough to have him on my team already, Mr. Nyheim Hines,
Yes,
for the Colts.
great. Yep.
Now, the Colts are arguably, they have the best offensive line in the league. They have a great head coach, Frank Reich, who's just a brilliant, he has a brilliant offensive mind as well. So it's just a lot of positives with this team. And unfortunately, Hines was like the afterthought. Everyone was talking about Taylor and Marlon Mack, and Hines was actually the third running back drafted from the Colts. As I was reading before we drafted is Phillip Rivers loves throwing the ball to running backs. And so I was like, okay, I'll take Hines. I was hurting at my running back position, so I was like, I need to have as many lottery tickets at running back as possible. But the guy had 8 receptions at the running back position, which is gold in a PPR league, such as our own. And he scored 2 touchdowns. So I think his floor is probably around 3 to 4 catches every game. Which is a safe floor, and whatever he does on top of that is just gravy. So I think Hines would be a great pickup, and you can plug him into your second running back spot moving forward.
Yeah, I think that is someone who's going to make a big impact, especially as everyone knows Marlon Mack just went down with a huge injury for the season. It looks like Jonathan Taylor is going to be the number one back, but Hines will surely be a beneficiary. He's getting some carries, but also coming out of the backfield. I know a few years ago, Phillip Rivers made Danny Woodhead an absolute necessity with at that point, the San Diego Chargers. So a pass catching back in the Phillip Rivers system is definitely a good guy to have. So Nyheim Hines, if he's available in your league, Joe Hall, fortunate enough to have him, but Joe's recommendation is Nyheim Hines. Justin, your Bucks, they didn't look great. That's okay. Your fantasy team is down. That's okay. But, we can make moves. Everybody can make moves. That's the beauty of fantasy football. And so who are you targeting this week with your waiver claim?
Waivers, I'm looking at Greg Olsen pretty much because number one, I actually forgot that he was actually on the Seahawks this year. Yeah. And just seeing his performance yesterday and knowing how Russell Wilson likes to target his tight ends. Like, he pretty much salvages careers. Not to say Greg Olsen's career is really bad, but he made Olsen look good yesterday. Got him a touchdown. He made Jimmy Graham look like he was still a legit tight end. That's still up in the air, but yeah, I'm looking at Greg Olsen to pick up from the waivers.
Yeah, no, that's the good old faithful, right? At one point in time, Olsen was one of those guys that you could chalk up probably as a top 4 or 5 tight end, roughly when Gronk was kind of at the height of his game, when Jimmy Graham was at the height of his game. So Greg Olsen's a name that everyone knows. And like you said, whether it was Will Disley last year, whether it was Jimmy Graham a few years ago, Russell Wilson has the propensity to use his tight ends, and when it gets to the red zone, he goes to those guys. And Greg Olsen, he's a big body, goes up and gets the ball. So that's an interesting take. I like that one though. A lot of people probably won't be looking for tight ends. People kind of wait and stream, but that's one who people should have their eye on. Ashton, we're coming to you. I see that you're focused. We know that you're serious about your fantasy and that you're down right now in your matchup. If things don't go your way, you might have an earlier claim. Who are you looking at?
Well, who I'm looking at, I can't get because Joseph himself drafted him. Even though while we were drafting, I kept telling people that Malcolm Brown would be the guy to kind of gear shift that Los Angeles Rams backfield. So
Malcolm Brown, trash.
Everyone saw what he did. Out rushed Cam Akers. I'm not going to go into fantasy points. Everyone got their own system, so it's going to be a little bit different. But the man scored 2 touchdowns, and that's promising. Their offensive line looked fantastic. It's something that caught a lot of people off guard. So there's a lot of people that benched Malcolm Brown and started Cam Akers and were thoroughly disappointed. And if it was up to me, I wish I could have at least tried to put in a claim for him, but Joe did his research.
Yeah, so Ashton, just real quick, we don't want to dive into points. Like you said, everybody has their different systems. What are your thoughts with the fact that Brown and Cam Akers kind of split the carries pretty 50-50? What kind of makes you feel like Brown has the edge in that backfield to be worth a claim when it's a 50-50 sort of split?
Well, I mean, he averaged more rushing yards per attempt, had more attempts, saw 4 targets in the passing game versus Cam Akers 1. So, I mean, you just hope out of the 2 who's going to get more PPR, catch per receptions. We assume Brown. Seems like he was a better runner as well.
Yeah,
better blocker also. Better blocker.
Yeah.
I saw Cam Akers kind of blow up a couple of coverages, so it's just kind of like a no-brainer. Maybe later on in the season, but for right now, he's someone you want to have.
Okay, for sure. Thank you. I'm gonna go with 2 guys that are on the waivers that I'm gonna be looking at, and the first is sort of like a deeper dive kind of thing, but someone that I think could have promise. His name's Quintez Cephas, and he's on the Detroit Lions. In our league's format, he only put up 7 fantasy points. He had 3 catches for 43 yards. But what jumped out to me is that he had 10 targets, right? And so that means if he stays in that range, his floor is, like Joe said with Hines, is going to be pretty solid. And so I thought that was interesting that Matt Stafford was targeting him as often as he did. I mean, he threw the ball 42 times and 10 of them went to Cephas. So maybe there's something there. It's definitely something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I don't know how much of my waiver balance I would put on someone like Cephas, but I'm intrigued by that. That's something that piqued my interest. And the other wide receiver who I'm looking at is part of the 3-headed monster over in Atlanta, Russell Gage. I mean, everybody knows Julio Jones is a top 5 wide receiver in the league, probably number 1. I don't want to go into that. And he puts up huge fantasy numbers. We know at this point it was a little bit of a surprise, but his counterpart, Calvin Ridley, had a great game. I'm expecting all of that for the rest of the year. But 12 targets for Russell Gage. I mean, a lot of people would have probably guessed it would be Hunter Henry who came in 3rd place with the Falcons, but Gage, 12 targets, 9 catches, 114 yards, over 20 fantasy points, guys. I'm looking at Gage, and then in a deeper look, I'm looking at Cephas. Am I heading in the right direction, fellas, or am I missing out here?
I'll be the first to talk. One, you're forgetting that Kenny Galladay didn't play, so that's going to eat into a lot of your man's targets. And I mean, it wasn't like everyone else was so far off. Marvin Jones was probably going against the Bears. Number 1 had 8 targets. Amendola had 7. So I mean, I don't see that. Something I'm just like, he's someone to keep on my radar. And same thing with the Falcons. They play the Seahawks. So you're assuming a safety's going to guard the tight end. And what better safety out there is there than Jamal Adams? So, I mean, I think it was just a hard matchup for Hunter Henry. Not Hunter Henry. Who's out there?
Yeah, Hunter Henry.
Hayden
All right, cool,
Hurst.
Oh, Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst, yeah.
So many
So
H's.
it's just Hayden Hurst is just it's gonna be hard for him to see that many targets with someone like that kind of covering him, as well as their linebacker, of course. So I don't know.
I do have a maybe follow-up question. Ryan, I guess you can jump in first. Let's say any of the guys mentioned who we're looking at. Is there anyone you would spend if people out there have a fab system where you spend your fake money to pick up? Is anyone you would spend like big bucks on to add to your team?
Yeah, I mean, guys, I'm all in on Gage. I'm fortunate enough where I think my wide receiving core is pretty solid. I have Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to be a target hog all year. And Tyler Boyd had a down game, but I think it was Joe. I mean, it was obviously Joe Burrow's first game. Julian Edelman. Like I'm comfortable with wide receivers, but I think Atlanta is going to be an aerial assault all season. I know Gurley got a touchdown, 56 yards, that kind of thing. But I think they're gonna. I think Gage can end up with 100 receptions this year,
Wow.
right? And so I think that in that system,
the optimism is real.
I'm all in on that. I think Matt Ryan's gonna feed the ball to everyone, and I think he has a chance of getting there. So I'm putting a good amount of my free agents balance on Russell Gage this year.
And you were the first one in our league to spend any money, right? Already.
Yeah. I spent a few dollars, just on a whim. Saw the Washington football team's depth chart, was hoping to see the guy who would number one maybe get the most carries. He didn't.
Right. You could have had Malcolm Brown for $0, who I picked up. But anyway, Justin, you had something that you were going to jump in with?
No, I was just calling it how I see it. Hot take Grace, man. Hot take Grace. 100 receptions or 100.
Right.
Yeah, 100 receptions. That's optimistic.
Think it could happen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our first segment on waiver wire pickups. And when we come back from this commercial break, we'll talk to you about some surprise performances, people that we liked and that we didn't like in their week 1 games.